Alex,
Yo, Kelly.
how you doing today, man?
I'm all right. How are you?
Groovy, man.
You're kidding.
You're
kidding. This was on my list, man.
I'm feeling all groovy and ready to just like peace out.
Is groovy what we're talking about today?
We're talking about hippies.
Oh, I literally had the word groovy on my list once.
Well, the hippies always said that word, groovy.
They did.
Yeah. Well, hippies were. What do you think about hippies? What do you think of?
I think of your parents.
Yes, fair.
It's funny because my parents were not hippies, but I remember being kind of scared of hippies when I was young. Like certain songs, like the White Rabbit, and Puff the Magic Dragon scared me. Songs scared me. Just any folk singing scared me.
Really?
I always thought it was very like maybe I was looking in their eyes and seeing just a glass over. I don't know. But I love the costumes.
Yeah.
I mean, I call them costumes because they seem like costumes now, but they were just their clothes.
Yeah. Style, their fashion.
Yeah. I like looking back at hippies, but when I was in it, I was always scared of hippies.
Okay.
And then, and you usually when you talk about hippies, you always say dirty hippies.
Well, that's Al. Al says dirty hippies. That was kind of his thing. He liked to shout that at people. Just drive down the road and just shout dirty hippie. He liked to shout it at people that weren't even hippies, like a well-dressed businessman. He just liked to roll down the window, and he called it dirty hippieing somebody. So, I don't know, something funny about it, but at the same time, hippies were part of the counterculture.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's what you were afraid of. It was something that began in the 50s, or actually began in the 60s, but it was because of the 50s. The 50s were so squeaky clean and so strict and very kind of fundamental rules all about what you can and can't do, what you can and can't say. And that culture kind of got a backlash, and that backlash was the hippie movement in the 60s, right?
And these were the baby boomers, right?
The baby boomers were the ones that came out of World War II. Well, no, I guess the baby boomers, that was the greatest generation. So after World War II, people were very serious, but the counterculture emerged with the baby boomer generation.
Yeah, people born in like the early 50s.
Yeah, they felt alienated, and they started to do things. They kind of moved into these areas. There were hippie hotspots. Can you think of any hippie hotspots?
San Francisco, like
Haight-Ashbury, yeah. Greenwich Village,
and Austin was where the hippies and rednecks would come together and make this beautiful city, right?
And the cowboys. Yep. No, that was one of the things about Austin was definitely had a hippie vibe, but for Texas that was a weird thing. Like California, you kind of expect that. But New York, maybe you kind of expect that. But Texas, you didn't expect it. The hippies would move here, and sometimes they were called flower children. That was one of the things that they talked about. They were often living in communes, where a group of them would live together.
Laurel Canyon. Have you ever heard of Laurel Canyon?
No. Where is that?
In like L.A. area.
Okay.
That was a
hippie hotspot?
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing you might have been afraid of was their unconventional clothing. And their long hair and their beards. Like beards are big today again, but the beards of the hippies were kind of shaggy looking. Like I think that was kind of a thing that I know men with beards did scare me as a kid a little bit. Yeah.
No, it was more of their music that scared me.
So the psychedelic, the sort of double meaning of the lyrics, like Puff the Magic Dragon had a double meaning, right? That kind of stuff.
Peter, Paul, and Mary scared me for sure. I'm serious.
Wow.
I know they seem so innocent.
I really,
especially now that they're like in their 80s.
Yeah,
I don't know how many are alive, but the folk music scared me.
That's really weird because I could see like maybe acid rock kind of scaring you, or
that soothed me.
Huh. Well, all right. Well, it's also ironic too, because you as you pointed out, my parents were kind of hippies, and I agree on that. Although my dad was in the military, so that's kind of a weird combination. But when he got out, he kind of he kind of had that sort of free life attitude, and
I think a lot of military people ended up being hippies and growing their hair out. And
well, I've seen pictures of your dad, and your dad looks like a hippie
now.
Yeah, he's got long hair and he's got a big shaggy beard, and he rides a motorcycle, which I guess is not exactly a hippie thing, but it's hard to kind of put that down. But at that time, those were very, very rebellious things to do, right? Yeah. To grow your hair out like that. We talked about the Beatles in the John Lennon episode. We talked about the fact that those haircuts they had were considered sort of appalling to a lot of people. Like they were shaggy.
And that was nothing compared to like what the Allman Brothers did later with hair down to their belt.
Yeah. Are you a man or a woman? I mean, that was the kind of thing that the more traditional people would say. Well, hippies were definitely all about the clothing, the style, the earrings, the beards, the long hair. They were also open to trying things like mind-altering drugs like LSD, marijuana. They were trying to kind of explore different states of consciousness that up until that point people were kind of afraid of, I think. And definitely all those things. I mean, if you look at marijuana laws today compared to 50 years ago, there's a big difference in the way people approach it and the way that it's viewed. And I'm not going to get into all that, but the hippies were definitely part of that movement. They were part of the movement that said, hey, this could be mind-altering in a good way.
And a little bit of rejection of capitalism, too. You mentioned communes.
Yep.
We're all going to live together and grow our own food, and free love also, right?
Well, they were big on free love. They were big on nonviolence,
this
right?
Is pre-AIDS.
They were definitely against war, and I think they viewed war as ultimately being about capitalism, being about money, right? Being about taking over people's territory or their resources. And so Vietnam, that was a big thing for the hippies to kind of go against, and they fought against things like women's rights were something they fought for. Gay rights were something they fought for. The ability to have more sexual freedom, because that wasn't something that people in the 50s did at all, or the 40s. It was a lot more puritanical back then.
But it was pre-AIDS, and the birth control pill had just come out.
Yeah.
So it made that very accessible.
Yep. And another thing they were big on was environmentalism. The hippies were often called tree huggers because they wanted to save the planet. And, at the time, I feel like the planet was in better shape. We weren't seeing these weird weather patterns and flooding and heat waves that we have today. But they kind of said, hey, that's all going to happen if we don't do something better.
But they didn't really know what to do about it. And looking back from today, it's kind of funny. If you've seen like what Woodstock looked like at the end, there's
all the trash,
just so much garbage everywhere.
Yeah, very true, very true. They didn't necessarily clean up after themselves, and they probably rode in, buses and microvans that polluted.
But they didn't know any better.
But the other thing was they had kind of their own language. So one of the words that I started with was groovy, right? It's kind of describing something that is usually exciting or fun or excellent. I think that actually comes from records. Like a groovy record, because it had grooves. That's
I'll buy that.
They said the word man a lot. Didn't matter if you were a man, a woman, didn't matter how old you were, but it was, hey man. Everything was.
We kind of say bro or dude like that today, but
yeah.
I still say hey man.
Hey man. Far out, that was a big one.
Oh yeah, far out.
That was something that was maybe unconventional or a little out of the norm.
That probably had to do with like the space race. Like everything was space.
Far out, man. No, that's just putting Whitey on the moon, man. We don't need to do that. Cool. That was something, and I think that's kind of become just very commonplace for people to say cool. Hey, that's cool.
Yeah, I think about that word sometimes, and that word has never gone out of style, really. Everybody still says it's kind of just, it's not even a slang anymore. It's
just the word cool probably gets used more to describe something being good or appropriate or okay than it is temperature.
But I thought Happy Days made that word popular.
Hey, that's cool. But see, that took place in the 50s. That was that sort of more repressed time that the hippies were against. Rad was another one. Something was rad or something was hip.
Radical. Yeah.
Something was wild. Those were all kind of things. Free spirit. That was a thing you described. People that were kind of like independent and uninhibited. Like, hey man, he's not crazy. He's just a free spirit.
Sure. Yeah, it's free spirit. I use that word to describe some of my friends.
And then, of course, we said flower child. And then, of course, peace and peace out. But you know what they called somebody who was more of a traditionalist, like a little less open to hippie stuff?
A square?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Dude, don't be a square, man. This is groovy. You should just run with it. Be a free spirit. Don't be such a square.
Yeah.
They've kind of had this famous person, Timothy Leary. He was one of the famous hippies who said, turn on, tune in, and drop out. That was kind of his thing about like open your mind. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of Sid Rowley or Sid Rowell, Rawle?
No.
He was supposed to be the king of the hippies. He was kind of one of the original hippies in Britain. I don't know anything about him, but he wrote a book about hippies eventually. But other hippies, can you name like Janis Joplin? She lived here in Austin. She was an Austinite, a Texas girl.
Yeah, from Beaumont,
and moved here. And
great hippie.
Joan Baez.
Yeah, now there's someone, our friend AW said that his parents used to play Joan Baez. I think he was scared of her, as a matter of fact.
I think she was kind of scary. Bob Dylan, big hippie. Carly Simon.
Oh, yeah.
Jane Fonda was a big hippie. Sure. Gloria Steinem.
Oh, yeah.
Grace Slick. You mentioned the white rabbit, or the wasn't that Grace Slick that's in the Go Ask Alice? Wasn't that a song? Jimi Hendrix. Our boy John Lennon was a big hippie. That's kind of where I got this idea, was from doing a lot of research on John Lennon. But there were also musical contributions: Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, the Beatles, and sort of, you mentioned a minute ago about all the trash after Woodstock. Well, a lot of people say Woodstock was sort of the end of the hippie age. 1969, it was a great event. People have tried to recreate it, and it really can't be recreated because I think people are a lot more. I think hippies tended to be a little more we-centric, like kind of the good, the commune, the good of the group instead of the individual. And I think we've gotten away from that, for good or for bad. But ultimately, with the first Woodstock, they lived that for a few days in this one time and place. At least that's the myth, right? That's what people say. And then they've tried to redo Woodstock. They've tried to do these other festivals, but it's never had the same vibe.
I think a lot of the hippies, it surprises me looking back that it wasn't more sustainable than it was. It was like a lot of them ended up selling out. A lot of them ended up being part of that, the 80s capitalism that they hated so much. A lot of them ended up being CEOs.
Yeah. Well, what did they turn into? Hippies became yuppies.
Yeah, sure. And there's even some that are like MAGA people today, which is probably the opposite of being a hippie, right?
Yeah,
and so a lot of them have come kind of full circle, or maybe that half circle. I don't know what that means. But,
right.
But I don't know if a lot of hippies have kept that going for 60 years.
Every so often you meet somebody who's still a genuine hippie, right? It's probably
more so in Austin.
Yeah. Every so often. I think our Uber driver last night, she was, if Erica was her name. Hey, Erica, if you're listening to this episode, this is for you. Dedicated to Erica, the Uber driver and hemp grower.
But she's a new hippie. I'm talking about the people that were hippies and are now in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
A lot of them sold out.
Well, you change over time, right? But the hippies did leave us with a few contributions. What are some things you think of that came from hippies that are still around today?
Well, I mean, besides like certain fashions.
Yeah, like blue jeans, right? I mean, blue jeans were not something most people wore until the hippies.
I thought that came from like cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bell bottoms. I don't think cowboys wore bell bottoms. It gets stuck in the
No,
horses,
you're right.
horses, in the stirrups. Vegetarianism, vegetarians kind of were popularized and really, I think before that, I think if you tried to be a vegetarian in the 40s or 50s, people would think you were crazy. And then the hippies kind of normalized it. And now today it's not as crazy as you would have thought back then.
Sure.
Whole grain bread, organic food, like all that sort of, Mother Earth, whole Earth kind of stuff. It was all, and now we go to grocery stores and pay more to get that because we realize that some of this processed stuff is not good for you, right?
Sure. Yeah, I can see that.
And then, there were other things like just kind of the fashion and the hairstyles, the yoga. I think, the yoga and the whole mystic Asia or Eastern philosophy kind of stuff was all hippie stuff. So, still around. Now, in the U.S., I found the 10 best states for hippies in 2024, according to the internet.
Yeah, you want me to try to guess these?
Yeah, give me a couple of guesses.
I would say Oregon, Washington, California. There are a lot of West Coast stuff there. So
okay, actually, you were right about Oregon and Washington. However, California is now number 32.
Oh, out of 50?
Out of 50. And you know where Texas is? 48.
But again, Austin, I think, would defy that.
Yeah, we're talking about the whole state. Texas is number 48. And you want to guess the least friendly?
Wait, I want to try to still guess like the top 5.
Okay.
So I've got Oregon, Washington.
Yep.
I would think North Carolina.
Nope, not in the top 10.
Maine.
Maine is, yes.
Yeah. Oh, Colorado.
Colorado, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Vermont.
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Vermont's where Ben and Jerry's come from, and Ben and Jerry's are like capitalist hippies.
True. But I think there's a big college scene up there. There's so yeah, you've got most of them. New Mexico also.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of a place where you go and you get your vibe and you're out in the desert. But California's 32, Texas is 48, so way down the list for hippies. And then
I would think the lowest one,
the last two,
number 50, would probably be like Mississippi.
Yes.
Alabama,
Louisiana. It's Louisiana and Mississippi are the two right after Texas, the two worst for hippies. So yeah, you mentioned it earlier. Hippies have been replaced by yuppies, and now they've all been replaced by Swifties. So good luck with that. If you're a hippie, I applaud you for sticking to your beliefs. You're not quite done yet, but you will be soon because I think that generation is dying out. And with that, we're going to say peace out, everybody.
If you're an old hippie, send us a picture of you in the 60s and a picture of you now, and we'll send you some.
We would love to see that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Peace out.
In a van down by the river lived a man named Joe. Dream catcher in the window, tattered clothes and soul aglow. Sang of peace and flowers on his guitar of old. Eating beans and berries, living life uncontrolled. One day down in Frisco, he found a suit and tie. Traded beads for briefcase, said his last goodbye. Moved into a high-rise, forgot his roots below. Now he's sipping lattes on the 27th floor. From rags to riches, from peace to stress, Joe traded in his flip-flops for a brand new vest. Gone on the drum circles, he's on the conference call. From poor hippie to yuppie, Joe's seen it all. He used to protest wars, now he funds the banks. Buys stocks and bonds, he's giving corporate thanks. Yet sometimes late at night, he dreams of simpler days. Guitar and campfire in the moonlight's haze. Oh, where did the freedom go? In boardrooms with the power shows, unable to let the old life fade. With every dollar, more souls been betrayed. From rags to riches, from peace to stress, Joe traded in his flip-flops for a brand new vest. Gone on the drum circles, he's on the conference call. From poor hippie to yuppie, Joe see it all. Joe traded in his flip-flops for a brand new vest. Gone are the drum circles, he's on the conference call. From poor hippie, I mean Joe's seen it all.